Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? Let's get back to Iraq. There's some interesting things that are taking place. And anytime you include the World Bank or the IMF, you definitely want to run away. Seriously. They're all hype. They're all BS. And all they are is an extension of the New World Order. So let's find out what's going on, because there was a scathing letter that was released regarding the Al-Qademi administration. But before we get going, take a look at Al-Qademi's face. For the life of me, and I said this before, it reminds me of something. Does it not remind you of the mayor? Yes, from Nightmare Before Christmas. Every time I see Al-Qademi, I go, man, he looks like the mayor from the Nightmare Before Christmas. Anyways, before we get started, hit the thumbs up button. If you're not a subscriber, please do so, because when you do, it helps out the channel, and I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold and silver, go to our friends over there at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. So this article here isn't telling us anything that we didn't already know. It says Iran says Iraq will turn into the largest economic market in the region during the next decade. Oh, hell yeah, it's going to. Let me tell you why. You have China trying to include Iraq into their One Belt initiative. Iraq is the gateway into the Middle East through the ports. Yes, I get people like, well, there's this port and that port. No, you don't get it. It's centralized. You can go right into Iraq, and it's central to all the other nations that you want to do business with. That makes it the heart of the region, and Iraq is going to flourish if they can just get their crap together. The head of the Iranian-Iraq Joint Chamber expected on Friday that Iraq will turn into the largest economic market in the region during the next decade, especially for Iran, stressing that the country seeks to increase the volume of trade exchange with neighboring countries. Okay, so you can see why it is Iran wants to hold on to Iraq so much. It really depends on it economically. If Iraq booms, so does Iran. The Iranian official attributed in a statement carried by the semi-official Iranian news agency, Fars. Today, the reason for the decline in Iran's exports to Iraq during the past 2 months is due to the export of gas and electricity to the country, explaining that given the talks that took place between the two countries, this issue should be resolved. So you can understand why it is that Iran wants Maliki's people in there, because they are Iranian-backed puppets. You get solder in there, it might not be so peaches and cream for the economy of Iran, considering they're under some serious sanctions. I said this before, look, Biden is a China puppet. China has a relationship with Iran. Iran should reach out to China, say, hey, pull the strings on that damn puppet of yours, and let's get these sanctions removed. He added that in addition to the decline in volume of Iranian exports to Iraq, we also witnessed an increase in the export of non-oil goods to this country. And we hope that our exports to Iraq will reach $10 billion by the end of the current Iranian year, which will end on March 20th, 2023, which is a great day, by the way. God has blessed this planet on the day of March 20th in multiple ways, one of them being my birthday. So it shouldn't be no surprise that Iran is counting big time on Iraq. If they're truly going to be the hub for the Middle East, then of course Iran wants to piggyback on that. It really depends on who is in charge in Iraq. Here we go. The World Bank. Al-Qademi meets the vice president of the World Bank Group. These people are not good. You can't believe anything that they tell you. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. The Prime Minister Al-Qademi confirmed on Friday that Iraq's determination to continue the economic reform platform, which is fine and dandy, but you never want the IMF and the World Bank involved. They truly are the one world order. The statement of the Prime Minister and the media said that the news received a copy of it said Al-Qademi met yesterday, Thursday, with the Vice President of the World Bank of the Middle East and North Africa on the sidelines of participation in the meeting of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. The statement added that during the meeting, the most important aspects of the cooperation between Iraq and the World Bank in the financial and economic fields and in the field of providing studies, consultation, and data were reviewed. Yeah, isn't that nice? Hey, look what we can provide you. There was a reason why Dr. Shabibi did not want to get into the Paris Agreement. He said their idea and their monetary policies were great for handling inflation. But his complaint was it did not allow the Iraqi dinar to grow at all. It kept its value low. And Dr. Shabibi was more interested in strengthening the Iraqi dinar. Anyways, he was forced into it and he went ahead and signed on it. But nevertheless, anytime you can avoid getting the World Bank and the IMF involved, do it. Right here you can see the Prime Minister said Iraq's determination to continue the economic reform curriculum lay strong foundations for sustainable development, create an attractive investment environment, and emphasize cooperation with the World Bank in the areas of modernizing the country's water policy and food security projects. Again, it depends on who it is that's going to lead the country. Oh, here we go. So this looks more like a hit piece from the United States. And you can tell what direction the United States is leaning on who they want to lead a little bit. Oligarchs and parties. An American magazine reveals the catastrophic inherent in Ali's resignation letter. Alawi has been the right-hand man to al-Kadhimi for the whole time al-Kadhimi's been in office. He is the one that came up with the reform papers and wanted them implemented. And they were implemented, obviously. And put Iraq back on track despite the fact that they devalued the currency, but it was necessary at the time. They didn't hold him in high regards because of it, but he was thinking of the long term for Iraq. Anyways, this is the Atlantic magazine that wrote this hit piece. People should not be overwhelmed by anything that the United States reports, unfortunately. The Atlantic, although it is something that I do listen to, but you have to take everything they say with a grain of salt. From time to time, they will sound like they're part of this agenda, and other times it sounds like they're trying to fight it. So they are a little bit on the confusing side. So it said the Atlantic highlighted the meaning and secrets of the sudden resignation of Iraqi Finance Minister Ali Alawi recently. So they are in the mind of Alawi, is what they're trying to say. Look, there's hidden codes in there. Hidden codes in there. Which bears serious indication as it represents an admission of impudence on the part of the reformist figure that may have relied on, and which confirms the failure of the consensual system based on the sharing of oil money and the dominance of oil money, the oligarchy and the militia that protected them. So, what does that mean? It looks more like a hit piece on Sadr and al-Kadhimi, is what it comes down to. So it sounds to me like the United States wants Maliki back in office. Gee, I wonder why that is. Remember, I told you this New World Order loves having corrupt politicians in power because they're easier to control and easier to predict. The American magazine provided an account of what happened since last August 16th when government ministers met at the Republican Palace in Baghdad, where Alawi, who has been the Minister of Finance since 2020, made an exceptional request as he wanted to read the full text of his resignation letter aloud, which was agreed upon by al-Kadhimi. So does that sound right? He's like, okay, everybody, look, I'm not just going to hand you a letter, but I insist on reading this out loud. Okay, this is according to the Atlantic. The report, which is translated by the news, Alawi began reading the resignation letter with traditional bureaucrats' pleasantries, as he directed a special thanks to the Prime Minister, but presented a comprehensive indictment of the political class, which the American magazine described as perhaps amongst the most scathing resignation letter ever written. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was.
Same as it ever was, that's for sure. So nobody should be surprised that the U.S. report considered that when future historians write about Iraq's troubled efforts to establish an American-style democracy during the early years of the 21st century, Alawi's resignation letter will provide them with a rare insight into internal situations in a failed state. Rare insight? Rare. I mean, I've been talking about Iraq now for years, and there's nothing rare about it. They're full of corruption and have been for quite some time. Ever since Saddam Hussein was removed from power, there's been other groups of people jockeying for position to run the country. They try to make it look like a democracy, but the truth is, it's not exactly the type of, well, maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. It does remind me of another type of democracy. Oh yeah, ours here in the United States. So this article is long, but it goes on to give a scathing report on the government that Alawi was part of, stating that the corruption is much deeper than people even know, and that they tried very hard to root out the corruption, but the people that are in power really did everything they can to protect those who are part of the corruption. I'm sure because they got kickbacks. And this includes the judicial system. We know we got to hear in our own judicial system. Instead of judges doing their jobs, they're too busy being activists, and that's not what you want. So you can tell by the wording of this, that's definitely a hit piece. This is right here. The report described what happened in the meeting where Alawi's reading of his resignation took half an hour, and he was met with silence and astonishment by those present, as none of them expected that a great statesman like Alawi, who has many books, issued such a harsh criticism. Like the build-up? Oh my God, those people were in shock that a man with such prestige knowledge and characteristics wrote such a hateful letter. I love how the American media does that. Well, let's build up the credibility of those who are criticizing those we don't like. And this is how you know it's a hit piece. However, the report indicated that Alawi's resignation caused a shock in Western capital, as the man, before returning to Iraq in the middle of the year 2020, was one of the strongest voices warning against corruption and is seen as an embodiment of integrity and efficiency in the financial field. Build them up. This way then you go, wow, if this man is saying this about these people, whoo, he's so credible, because the magazine continues to build him up, build him up, build him up. Alawi was a close friend of Al-Qadimi's. So for the magazine to make it sound like Alawi's bashing Al-Qadimi, I don't think so. I just find it hard to believe. And here again is how you know it's a hit piece. Remember how they build it up, build it up? It says, and after you mentioned how he took office after the outbreak of the protests in 2019, where Al-Qadimi later appointed Alawi and many technocrats in the new government, adding that the observers from outside, it seemed as if it was the dream team and perhaps the last chance for Iraq to renew itself. It's almost as if they're saying there's no hope for Iraq. Well, you got to ask yourself this. There was one man who controlled that country for a long time, and he had no problems controlling them. I'm not saying he did it in a nice way, but look, Saddam Hussein not only controlled Iraq, but controlled most all of the Middle East. The report quoted the resignation, the letter, as how corruption was deeper than we realized, and that he learned that the horrific truth about the deterioration of the state mechanisms during the past 15 years, and that parties and interested groups have effectively taken over the state, noting that the Ministry of Finance itself was crowded with people who do not have significant experience or language skills and have little awareness of modern practices in public administration and finance. That's what the Biden administration did, and that's the same thing as the Obama administration. What they would do is put people with very little experience in some very important positions. And the reason for that is then the shadow government couldn't run freely without these people realizing what the hell was going on. So that's not surprising to me for them to put less experienced people in there, because if they get caught, what they do is they go, oops, it wasn't me, it was them. They didn't know any better. It makes it real easy when you have less experienced people who don't know their butt from a hole in the ground in control of certain areas. This allows those who know what's going on to really run schemes and allow corruption to run rapid, because those who are in power lack the experience necessary to catch these kind of things. So according to the report, the arrival of Alawi and Al-Qadimi was welcome as one of the potential saviors of Iraq, because they were not polluted by Iraqi politics, but this situation made them enjoy only limited influence in a country where power is exercised through armed street gangs, looted money, and religion. True and not true. So I think Al-Qadimi had a lot more influence than people think, although he was running up against something very powerful. Same thing with Trump was in office, running up against a deep state is not an easy thing to do when you're trying to wean out all the corruption. So the report indicated that Alawi was working on exposing old contracts that included fraud and obstructed efforts to pass new contracts, including the electronic payment system, which is known as a Q card. That was a big thing back in the day, which aims to help the government employees and retirees to withdraw their salaries more easily. But the system was implemented, running it without oversight. It became a method used by oligarchs and militia leaders to cut salaries and drain money through ghost soldiers. Remember when Al-Qadimi got in office, they ran an audit and found that several of the people receiving salaries were not even real people. So Al-Qadimi was doing something about that, and he did wean out a lot of phantom employees. So the report continued by saying that one of the most famous members of the elite oligarchy in Iraq suggested implementing a new electronic payment system to replace the Q card, which was a worse option, and that in addition to the possibility of continuing the grift, the new company proposed a provision in which it grants itself a fine of $100 million if the government contract is canceled. The report added that surprisingly, this contract was approved by the board of directors of the main state-owned bank, although Alawi was trying to prevent this from being verified. The report quoted Alawi as saying that this contract was for him, the straw that broke the camel's back, explaining that the contract showed the degree of state's deterioration and its transformation into a puppet of special interest. So we get that everywhere. Same as it ever was. Same as it ever was. It's a scathing report. It is. There's no doubt about it. But it is information that's coming from a media group over here in the United States. And it's really hard to trust anything that comes out of the United States, unfortunately, these days. It just is. I think Al-Qadimi did a great job from what I can read about it. I don't come from Iraq, but everybody that I spoke to that's there seems to agree. Al-Qadimi not only did a great job for what he was able to do, unfortunately his hands were tied in a lot of other areas because he didn't have the influence and power to override some of the areas that were corrupted. And it made it hard for him to do his job. Anyways, I like to see Al-Qadimi and Saleh get back in there, let them form the government that they want, and be able to go after the people who were part of this corruption and make them accountable. This is exactly what Sauter wants. Did Al-Qadimi do a good job, or was he just part of the corrupt system? Do we trust the Atlantic report? It's kind of hard to say because they're good. Well, they're kind of borderline if you ask me. Anyways, that's it for now. You guys let me know what you think, and I will catch you later. I'm out.